This is a follow-up video to my previous video where I discussed response between two different types of subwoofers in an enclosure that I built inside my Hyundai Sonata. The reason for this video is probably going to be two parts. One thing I'm going to share is some information about how I pull the TS parameters for my subwoofers. And the other thing I'm going to share is some information I derived from the new Sundown NSV 618s that I have purchased. So you can see this is WinISD. This is a newer version. I moved over to this version because it's a little bit easier on the eyes to view. And we're looking at the response of the enclosure that I have currently in my car. And this is, these 18s here are the Alibaba 18s that I reconed about 3 years ago. Over here on the right is a set of TS parameters. They're dated. The file name is going to reference the date. This, what I have highlighted, was about 3 years ago. The above parameters is literally 30 minutes ago. So today, about 30 minutes ago. The response graph here in WinISD is the parameters 3 years ago. I could reload the new parameters and this graph would change slightly based on those, but that's not important at the moment. The important thing to note is how the parameters changed. As you can see, it's a dual 1 ohm subwoofer. Today I pulled 2.45 ohms on the RE. The FS has dropped significantly to 25 hertz. That's obvious suspension break-in. So we can see the CMS has changed to 0.081, obviously, so the suspension break-in again. The MMS should be almost identical to the previous, and it's only off by 20 grams or so, which is not bad. The SPL will also be affected by the change in some of this. The important things to note are the Q. The Q parameters, we do not want to see those change. Because if the QE changes at all between the dates, that means the coil has changed somehow. And it could be the former is degrading, it could be the winding is degrading or falling apart. Things like that can affect the Q. Just the coil itself. So we know that hasn't changed. So that's good. Okay, so we've established that the parameters on this sub have not changed much in 3 years, except for the suspension and the overall FS of the sub, which is expected. And this is graphed to represent that, and I've already shown that in a previous video. So up here I also have the original graph that I built that was a comparison using the NSV 618s and the parameters that are pulled from their website. So here those are. So we can see the Q, QMS, and the derived total Q, and you guys or anybody on this video can spot check me, but these are all gonna match exactly what Sundown puts. I did not put the LE in there for my own reasons. It's just not in there yet. So but anyways, these are identical to their website. So these are the website parameters of their NSV 618 stock D2. And that's what's graphed in the red. What's graphed in the pink is the subs that are in my car currently. Now, obviously I've purchased these new subs. They're already in hand, so I've already pulled the TS parameters from those subs that I have in my possession, and they're up here in this graph, and I've already graphed it myself and looked at it. But I'd like to ask a question before I proceed and ask if anybody has ever purchased Sundown's subwoofers and pulled their own parameters using DATS version 2 and had discrepancies, because that's what I encountered. So let me see if I can drop this down. So here are the parameters I pulled for the NSV618 that I have in my possession today. So these, to me, do not match. Yep. They do not match the parameters on their website, which I was surprised. We can clearly see that QE is way different. The FS obviously is going to be different, which I expected. The other thing that was surprising to me was the MMS. So I asked Sundown in a communication about this, because my initial thought was, because they're selling this as a carbon cone option, that the parameters I pulled were due to my stock configuration not having a carbon cone option. But then I was like, well, that wouldn't affect the Q. That would just affect the moving mass and the SPL and perhaps, you know, a little bit of the CMS because it's a lighter, you know, overall moving mass. But so huge question I have sent to them, because to me what it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a completely different coil on this NSV6 versus what their stock parameters provide, because the only way to adjust QES is based on the type of feedback that the coil gives in the gap. So I'm hoping to get a response from them in time, and I wanted to share this video, and I will do a follow-up video showing the comparison of the what I thought I was going to get in my build here versus what I am going to end up getting with these parameters. And I'll share more about that soon when I you know, depending on what kind of response I get from Sundown. Now, I did want to say that I triple checked my parameters. I pulled parameters from both subs simultaneously, you know, side by side. So both NSV6s are almost identical as far as Q and FS, and they were all the same. And so then I thought, well, maybe I messed it up. Maybe my DATS version 2 device is not pulling accurately. So I recalibrated it and pulled the parameters again. And then I decided to pull parameters from an existing sub that I already had previous parameters on and compare them, which I did today. So I know it's not the device that's malfunctioning. I know it's not the it's not the factors that I can control. So if they change something in the sub between what's posted on the website for, you know, in between when they ship them to me, then that's a question for them. So I'll post a video with my experience there when I get a chance. Thank you.